to start with questions. The first question is about automatic process of issues submit to the bug tracking system. Maybe you have some examples, flows, ideas how to perform it exactly. Sinkaris, you might have some ideas.
I can say that from my experience with the testing automation tool, they have the ability to generate a ticket. Definitely, there will always be some fields that you will need to complete manually because an automation framework cannot know which team would you like to assign this ticket to and which person and what is its severity. But there is definitely some helpful start point that they provide. I mentioned it in my presentation, but now I can say that this is the tool that has it, for example, that they convert our tests into steps to reproduce the scenario. So it makes the tickets much more descriptive. It takes us less time to clearly define the buggy flow, and they add the link to the test, which can be used for a playback once the ticket is resolved, which, as I said, can reduce the QA bottleneck. I'm not sure if full automatic submission of a ticket is possible by the automation team, but I would be curious to know if someone thinks differently.
I already implemented such a solution for our framework. Actually, it can submit bugs automatically in Jira and in Azure DevOps, but I usually suggest people not to turn it on for all of the tests, but only for, high priority tests. We use it in the past for there are tests that I call heartbeat that are running on production. There are only a few of them just to check whether the login is working, whether the site is loading and all of that. And if there is a problem, we create automatically the bug and send SMS and all of that. So it's doable, it's possible. There are APIs, so it's not a problem.
Yeah, okay. Anton, it's like for you, it's like kind of incident management approach. So detect some smoke scenarios on fly, identify people involved. Yeah. No, from my experience, you cannot just automate all this process, as Katya mentioned, because the system will not know which person to assign. Okay, we can, for example, provide one person who will distribute these issues, then, for example, or review it or add details. So this automation can be used to provide more information, I would say, or exclude some copy pasting from logs or other things, but it will not replace human involvement 100% for sure. Yeah. Guys, anything else to add here?
I would just add to that, Alex. I think that I share the same opinion as you have. Doesn't mean that if you can automate it, this should be the right thing. Submitting bugs is one of the most sensitive things here because you might be introducing noise, into the development team if you are just kind of shooting bugs into the systems in the sake of automation. I will be very careful in what we actually inject into Jira and the noise level that we are adding, and instead making sure that we are doing due diligence into the ticket itself, adding all the information, all the details, assigning the right responsible engineer and stuff like that, and kind of gain the automation values and ROI in other places. But again, that's just my opinion. I know that developers are swamped with so much noise today. Adding too much additional redundant noise might be more harm than good here.
Yeah, and saving time for issue submit may just provide a case when developers will spend extra time investigate these bugs.
Exactly.
And I think people should always remember that, QAs and development teams, that bug tracking system is one of the communication channels between QA and dev teams. So this is the exact place where details can be discussed. So the idea is to do not pass issues in production. Here is the core logic. If automation of issue submit process does not affect it, then it's good. Okay, but sometimes it may affect the development team as well. Yeah. Nicolas, anything else here? You're on mute. I see you're on mute.
Sorry, not on my side.
Okay, cool. So let me switch to the next one question. The question is related to issues related to, I think, unavailable environment. So maybe there are some approaches to exclude environment-related risks.
I can start if you want. Maybe in the past, in other big companies that I worked with, we had maybe a small suite of tests that you run first before the huge suite, just to check the environment. And if there is problem, we just don't execute the rest. You can create like a workflow of jobs to perform this. And a second approach that maybe it's not so reliable is to use a special runner for retrying the failures. If, for example, there is a downtime, just to check it again. There is a similar approach for handling downtimes for microservices. Is the same thing, basically. So I think it's a good thing. But you need to be careful to list all of these retries, because they can hide flaky tests.
I can add to that, I love the retry mechanism. It's a very useful one when used properly. But I want to double click on the word environment, because environment can mean a lot of things, right? Environment can be even the smartphone or the web browser that you are testing on, and these are also flaky environments by themselves. Think about a smartphone that you are doing testing on, your mobile application. Okay, this mobile device connected, either it's coming in the cloud or locally or on premise, it has a lot of interruptions that you're not always able to anticipate. Pop-ups, security alerts, text messages, depending on which provider it's being connected to. So this is also an environment risk to your test automation, because if you're not anticipating an incoming pop-up to your mobile device while you're testing the application, your automation will fail. So you need to also anticipate all these interruptions, regardless if the mobile device is still connected and the environment is not down. Okay, so that's another layer of risk to the automation development or testing process. But this is one thing. The retry mechanism is the second, as Anton mentioned. And I think at the end of the day, it's kind of certification of the environment. I like to use the word certification, because you need to certify and make sure that the environment that you are testing on, from one hand, is clean and ready for testing. On the other hand, it mimics as much as possible the real world scenario, so you do get the right feedback while still having a safe place to test your application.
I would like to comment on the fact that it depends, as in many cases, because it depends on the maturity of the enterprise regarding virtualization, for example. If you already are using containers, then I would suggest start from scratch. So as you mentioned before, yes, you can do, well, what we did in the past was smoke testing. We smoke test the environment as the first step. But the better stuff is, hey, we should start from scratch, automate the setup on the infrastructure, and start from a clean slate. But of course, if you are not into a containerization already, then it's a wrong advice, because it doesn't make any sense. So I think a lot depends on where you are on your path to automatization already.
Yeah, but in common words, I would say that it's all about some risks mitigation. So you can prepare your mobile phone manually, for example. When we talk about web apps that connects to a lot of microservices, you can create some mocks or stubs for these microservices, so they will provide you mock response, and no need to affect your user interface with data from microservice. So you need to test the user interface, let's say. So yeah, it's
Again,
about
it depends. It depends on what you want to test.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea is, okay, first define the scope of what you want to test. If you want to include the whole chain, then you need to test the whole chain. And you must understand that, of course, there are cons. It will be slower, it will be more fragile, and it will be hard to debug. But of course, you can test only the layer that you want, but you will have no confidence that the whole chain works as expected. So again, first define the scope, and then define your affinity for risk. I believe that you should have both. You should have like slices, like testing the slices first, because in general, as you mentioned, you use mocks, they are very fast, you don't care that much. And then if it fails there, of course, there is an issue, because then at this point, your test shouldn't be flaky. And then when you go up the testing pyramid, then you like add more dependencies, and then you accept that, yeah, they might be flaky, then you add in some retries and so on and so forth.
Okay, thank you. Cool. I think we can switch to the next one question. It has 2 steps, I think. So the first is about VAD. I don't really know this tool in framework, but I think it's to Eran because it's related mostly to Cypress. So if you've heard something about it.
It's a quick no. Unfortunately, no, I haven't. I never heard about Din. But more homework for me. As I mentioned in my session, Cypress is growing with many plugins and many dependent frameworks and languages. So I'll need to check this Vadin framework after this session. And I think that Nicolas does know about it.
Yeah, actually, I do know Varadin, but I didn't test this with Cypress. What there is a dedicated test bench framework. So Varadin is an open source framework that you can develop with, but they are selling their testing framework. So because they want to make money as well. So I'm pretty sure that's the reason you cannot test it with anything else. It's much harder to do, and they have their own testing tool.
So that was the next question.
Yeah, test bench, but it's paying.
I see. Thank you. Thank you. Cool. Next one question is mostly about seeing some scenarios where you need to analyze CSV files and some log files.
So I think that there might be many tools which allow this, but it's a question of how easy it is to achieve it. At my current company, we use Selenium and Testim for creating automation, and we do have tests in both frameworks, which analyze both CSV and log files. It's very simple JavaScript implementation inside these tools. So yeah, I guess these should be coded tools in order to do it, as far as I know. But I think that any coded tool should allow this opportunity.
Yes, same on my end. It depends on your, I think, technical stack that you have. So if you're C# based, please explore some libraries in C#. So there are a lot of them. I think we can go to the next one is about WebDriver IO tool and your vision on it. So about me, I know that WebDriver IO it's like growing tool that allows you to cover I would say quite everything for now, because they are based on Selenium and Appium as well. They interact with WinUp yeah, I think it's good when you have cross-platform applications and business logic is similar in application types. So why not?
I'll just add to that, Alex, that WebDrive.io also has a great community behind it. It's growing, and one of the recent open source libraries that was added with WebDrive.io is to support or to run Appium with WebDrive.io on Flutter applications. So you can actually test through the WebDrive.io protocol a Flutter application
Wow.
on mobile. So it's still growing, but that's the most used GitHub repo today for testing Appium with Flutter application together. So it's a great tool. That's bottom line.
Yeah, and they're quite integrated with South Labs cloud service for execution environment.
Yeah.
I think one point to mention is when you evaluate an automation tool, one of the questions that you should ask yourself is who is going to implement this automation in your company, who is going to create tests, who is going to use this tool. Are these people technical enough? Is the tool intuitive enough if the people are not technical? So just another aspect to add, regardless of WebDrive.io, but in general, how intuitive is the tool for the maybe not very much technical stuff to implement automation?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Katya. So the next question is, I think, also close to tool sets. So do you use separate approaches with different frameworks used, or you also consider based on business needs?
I would borrow from Nicolas, is depends answer, because it really depends. I've seen customers, small and huge one, like enterprises, that are using different approaches. Some of them are using in specific projects, the BDD approach with Cypress and Cucumber. Some of them are just using Selenium and others. So it's a very generic question, and it depends on, again, and Katya mentioned, the skill set that you have within the organization, the process and workflows in your entire software development lifecycle. Technology is technology. You need to match the technology to the skill set and the process that you decide on working. And it's not just an individual decision. It needs to be kind of a team decision, because it's always more than one that does or gets involved in this workflow. So I hope I answered that, but it's really a very generic one, and it depends on many variables.
Yeah. In addition to your words, I would say that I've seen a lot of projects in my past related to test automation, and now it depends on how teams are organized and how the processes in all company are organized. Some teams are isolated absolutely, and they can select everything that they want. Some teams, they must focus on specific programming language in company. Some of them were related before, and then business decided that we should create a standard. For example, about WebDrive.io, there was a case when all the teams were learned to work with WebDrive.io instead of separated one solutions. So it depends on company structure, I would say, and some requirements, internal policies you have. Yeah. So this from my perspective. Okay. A few words about mobile test automation and execution devices determination. There are different kinds. Sure, for local test runs, we can use simulators. Okay, that's fine. We can use real devices connected to our machines, as well as cloud services. So the question here is how to select, I think, right layers of execution devices.
I'm going to respond, but if anyone else wants to go first, I spoke too much already.
Maybe one of the approaches is to use some kind of analytics to check what our users are using, right? This is one of the usual ways to pick the right devices and resolutions. And another one that basically I put into the framework that I'm supporting is that you can just search on the internet for the most used resolutions and devices and pick from there. This is also another approach.
Since I've been doing mobile test automation and testing for the past 22 years, I can just give you the my point of view, and it's a mix of the stage of the application, whether it's in the early stages where you are good with just the virtual devices, simulators or emulators, iOS and Android, but it's also the scenario that you're trying to automate. We know that simulators and emulators, specifically iOS and Android, are very different. There are use cases that are supported on Android and aren't supported on iOS and vice versa. So I can give you a ballpark of 65 to 70% of the use cases that might be automatable on a virtual device, but you still have the gap of 30% that can only be automated on real devices. So it's in addition to what Anton mentioned, and I'm using analytics. I'm writing the index report for the industry of which devices to test on every quarter, right? So I use analytics and data. But at the end of the day, if you want to automate, you need the platform to support it, and not all of the scenarios can be automated on virtual devices today. So
Yeah, exactly. So detect some scenarios that can be executed against virtual devices, and then detect what can be executed on real devices only.
exactly.
Good.
There is always this rule to remember: the closer to you are to the reality, then the longer it takes, the harder it is to set up, and the more fragile it is. But of course, you've got more confidence. So perhaps a mix of all of them is always good. And I'm not talking about mobile in that case. I'm talking about general experience.
Yeah. Thank you, Nicolas. Now, and the last one question that we have, because time is going down. So it's addressed to you, Nicolas. Coverage with unit tests is great, but how do you find code coverage with functional tests?
So I hope that I convince you that code coverage is the worst metric ever. I hope. And now the question is, we want to have high mutation coverage with functional tests. And it's a great question. And I wouldn't advise you to do that at all. The problem is that then I've showed you with unit tests how slow your tests can get with mutation testing. With functional tests, which already are slow by definition, it's going to be a mess. You won't get any benefits. So if your boss, because in general those are like management-led decisions, it's just talk him out or her out. It's not a good idea. Just make your boss understand that it's going to take too long to be really beneficial. Again, testing pyramids, let's say like fast test first, fail fast, and then we can cover every case. But the higher you go on a testing pyramid, the less tests you should have, and you should test more the nominal pass, because normally the exceptions or the errors, they should already have been tested at the lower level. You want, for example, if imagine you have an e-commerce application, you should have like perhaps one or two like big functional tests. Is the user able to put something in their cart, to do the checkout, to pay, and it's done? Of course, it's going to take a lot of steps to do that, and having to throw code coverage inside is not super interesting, in my opinion.
Thank you. Thank you for such extended and absolutely confident answer. Yeah, nice. I think we can spend a few minutes for one more question. It's interesting because it's about AI, and all people now talk about AI. So, what do you think about AI generated codes? As example, here is GitHub Copilot provided. So, and I think, what do you think about the future of these AI tools?
I have a strong opinion about it. At the end of the day, you know, you need the business case to use AI. Okay, you need to have a problem in the organization to apply AI rules, like you do with testing, right? Katya, you mentioned testing.io. I know this solution very well. And why would you use that? Okay, you would use it because maybe you don't have the right skill set in the organization to write code in Selenium. Second would be it is much faster to automate test cases with an automated solution like testing.io. I work for Perfecta, so we have more or less the same tools, but there are objectives to use that. So the objective of using AI-generated code, and I know about the GitHub Copilot, is obviously to expedite the software development cycle. Okay, but at the end of the day, you have user stories, you have projects that you need to develop, and you need to understand how this thing fits into the process. Do you have the right processes and practices within your software team, the R&D, the squads that you have, depending on the structure, to really apply this? It doesn't fit every team, okay? It has benefits. It can get you, I know, save you some time and maybe some resources in the short term, but it will get you up until a certain point, and then you need to take the lead from that point, right? The AI wouldn't maintain the code going forward. It will help you reach to a certain level, and then it's on your responsibility to maintain it. And by the way, that's the same thing for test cases as well. You're using a tool, it will generate the test for you, but then you need to make sure that they're still providing value. So it's a mixed response here, but yeah, that's what I think.
It reminds me a little bit of a question: will automation ever, like automated testing, will it ever replace manual QA? It will not. It will help wherever it can help. It will do the majority of repeated tasks, but human will always be much more efficient for certain scenarios, for testing certain scenarios. I think the same is with AI. It looks like the world is going towards it, and it's very helpful at some point. For example, if we talk about some example with testing, if there is a self-healing mechanism for locating your elements on the screen, which some of the identifiers was changed, but the system is smart enough to find it based on the other elements, it saves you tons of work on creating the tests and on maintenance. So in some cases, it is very helpful. It's kind of automating solutions, like making it more and more efficient. But I'm not sure that everything will be, it will be possible to implement everything using AI. So at some extent.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Yeah, Nicolas, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think I'm the oldest, so I've seen a lot of initiatives trying to remove developers from the development lifecycle, because developers are divas and they are rare, especially good ones, and they are expensive and they always nitpick. Yes, I've seen everything. Now there is no code, there is low code, there is all those stuff. I believe that's a dream that, like, people in charge, the people who have the budget, they want to remove developers. And I can understand, because yes, we are expensive. But this Copilot initiative and any AI stuff, they only help developers write codes. The value of a developer is not in writing code. Believe me, I've been a developer for 2 decades. I'm an average developer, and I believe that any average developer can develop any business level application whatsoever. But to understand the user's needs, to understand the user story, to tell them, hey, what you had in your head now, what you wrote, like this paragraph contradicts this paragraph. Well, no AI is going to solve that ever. So the communication channel, whether it's tests, whether it's specifications, whatever, this is where the real value of developers exists. And yeah, we are not easily replaceable. The day this can be replaced by an AI, the whole world will have a lot of unemployment already if we don't die by fire or by whatever before. But yeah, sorry, I'm French. I'm a bit pessimistic.
Yeah, Anton, what's your vision of AI future in terms of test automation?
I just believe that about writing code, it will just be just a little bit of a better intelligence, help you to write a little bit faster, but it cannot. I mean, nowadays I'm almost the whole day I'm writing code. You cannot, like, these algorithms are really simple right now. They can for example, last year I developed a solution that can analyze the failing results a little bit smarter with the AI, and this can help you, for example, to filter 80% of the failures and mitigate the flaky tests and notify you by chat. Yeah, this is doable, but I don't believe that ever they will be possible to develop a highly complex, automated tests or test data or all of that. They can just help you to, write a little bit faster the code and maybe help you to analyze the results and skip some of the failures, but that's it.
Yeah, exactly. So AI shouldn't be like a North Star. AI can be a good option or several options for people who create scripts. For example, automatic one, page object or screen object generation. That's awesome, I think. Yeah, but I think 100 years will still not replace manual efforts. So yeah, it's not about today's summit, I think. So that was the last one question, and yeah, I would like to say thank you all for your presentations. Yeah. So stay safe. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It was an interesting discussion.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You too.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye bye.
Goodbye.
Bye,
Bye.
folks.